we are going to be reading stories from Nier Automata's the book called Nier Automata Short Story Long. This has a collection of different stories that take place within the world of Nier Automata. There are a total of 8, and they each have images that we can show. I'm probably going to just read the first one, and then there are people in chat. I will ask if anybody wants to choose one. The first one is the flame of Prometheus. I'm still going to need my water. This is the image that is put right on the beginning of it. A small. Hold on. Pause the music, and we can hear. A small flame smolders in the consciousness. Checkup sequence initiated. Camera connection unavailable. Link with motor mechanisms broken. Memory block defective. I made it the interference that all my other functions aside from my consciousness had been destroyed. Log confirmed. Transmission record from the self-repair machines. I report that various tests. Oh, I'm slightly blocking my camera. Where was I? Log confirmed. Transmission record from the self-repair machines. I report that various tests are being performed on the Cassis. Self-repair sounds sophisticated, but they are small, ant-like robots that simply execute tests haphazardly. It is because of these ants that I was fortunately or unfortunately rebooted. Test that in the right arm. Test that in the left arm. Test that in the head. Test that in the lower body. Test that in the torso. Yet again, test that in the right arm. And like that, the crude robots surveyed the body to repair the fixable areas they could. Fixable areas they find. Repaired the visual mechanism. That was my order to the ants that were in disarray. Instead of the preset programming that let them roam in disorder, a coordinated effort to repair would be much more efficient. But the ants ignored the order. Apparently, my command and mechanism was still malfunctioning. I sighed. Oh well. There was all the time in the world. I located my ID after searching through my deteriorated memory block. P33. Oh, no. I remember that one. This is actually one I hadn't read yet, so. It seemed that was my model number. And next to it was a string of characters. P-chan. Was this an individualized ID? I wasn't sure. I decided to stare at the characters until my mechanisms were fully functional. It took 1,032 hours, 12 minutes, and 34 seconds for my transmission I/O to recover so that I could communicate with the ants. At last, with functioning arms and legs, I began the required self-repair sequence. According to the restoration procedures, I first had to repair my memory block, but most of my memory had been destroyed, and there was little I could salvage from my charred memory drivers. I decided to reluctantly move on to the next procedure, which was camera repair. 48 minutes and 21 seconds later, the first thing that popped into my recovered field of vision was an abyss. I could see a faint light right near the bottom. Realizing that I was clinging onto the ceiling, another 21 seconds later, observing the ants moving about my body, there seemed to be some kind of gravity field keeping me and the ants fastened to the ceiling. After analyzing the situation more objectively, I realized that my body was not clinging to the ceiling, but in fact, my internal camera had been inverted, and I was lying on the ground. Simply put, instead of lying on my back, I need to repair the gravity sensor as soon as possible. "540 hours later, recovery of links between arms and legs. They creaked as I got to my feet. The first thing to do was to find a replacement and for the completely severed bundle of thick cords that acted as my spine. Determined, determining that it was faster to find a spare than to gather materials and repair, I ordered the ants to find a spine from the P33 series warehouse. But this was a mistake. Apparently, a security code was necessary, which at some point had been stored in my memory block. Without it, I, as well as the ants under my command, were not recognized as the P33 series and were blocked out. Hi. Sam, we're reading a story about the robot from a Nier replicant. In the end, we had to resort to hacking the warehouse's computer and forcefully extracting the part, which took 120 hours. Exasperated, I stood up and looked around. Dust flew off of me. I wondered how long I had been non-functional. A huge room of rubble was scattered about. A rusty structure made of steel frame and plates that showered red particles. How long had it been since my previous self came here? Glancing up, I saw a ray of light spilling in and from nowhere in particular. The moment I saw that light, a phrase resurfaced in my memory. A block. I will see the outside world. That phrase was not an order. It was simply some character string data. But that phrase spurred my memory, my consciousness, and my casus. It was a goal that I desired. I remembered that he was the one that gave me the character data. But information about who he was had escaped my memory. I couldn't conclude why I remembered that phrase either. There was no other instructions in my stack. Seeing the outside world was my only current desire. Inspired by the phrase, I energetically put my left foot forward. I was going to go outside. That was his wish and my desire. I put out my right foot with even more vigor. My too powerful right foot punctured the rusted floor, which then quickly collapsed. Okay. 32 minutes later, my body, which had fallen a few hundred meters and slammed into the bottom of the abyss, lay in several pieces. I was laughing. Well, I was missing the vocalization unit, so in reality, I wasn't laughing, but my log was recording a flood of laughing activity. It was okay. I was alive. I ordered the ants to repair my arms and legs. They connected the arm, attached the claws, attached the rollers, connected another limb, then another limb, until my appearance completely changed into arachnoid form. The restoration sequence for P33 only precisely restored the chassis to that of P33, but P33's form was insufficient for escaping this abyss. That's I discarded the procedure that my creator had made and it reconstructed my body my way. Process reconstruction was complete. I dug into the cliff with each claw and slowly climbed up. The destination was the outside world, a beautiful world that he had yearned for. Of course, at first everything did not go as planned. The brittle walls quickly crumbled, and I was thrown to the ground many times. Even when I was climbing, well, falling debris from above knocked me off. The old structures were falling apart. Even still, I shot grapnels into the wall, pinned my torso against the wall, and created platforms. I used several other tricks to ascend. I spent day after day pushing my body closer and closer to the outside world. Since I felt my depth and speed of processing were inadequate, I stopped at a machinery room on the way and fused some stolen and processing and memory circuits to my brain. I contemplated several plans of action and ran throughout experiments. Some of the plans were better than others. I kept experimenting. It took 52 days to finally get back to the table where I initially awakened. On the center of the table were four unfamiliar black masses. I didn't remember them being there before I fell. That that meant they were placed there for some reason, or another after I fell. Four masses mutated and stood up. They were robots, P-33 models designed for combat. They were relatively a bothersome model. They were a relatively bothersome model. The eye of an enemy lit up, and before I knew it, the robot was firing a particle ray. 4, 5, 6 seconds. The beam's particles disintegrated various objects in the surroundings. I was enduring. I was using two of my forelimbs made of a hard material to shield myself from the attack. I received the recommended strategy. I retrieved the recommended strategy from my predictive memory A block. With my upgraded processing power, I was able to simultaneously consider various options. I accumulated data from my sensors, weighed the options, and decided on the best course of action. If the enemy energy tank was full, this attack would last a maximum of 24 seconds. My forelimbs would be able to withstand that damage. As my multiple processing circuits instantly settled complex dilemmas, the operation results resounded within me like a chorus. No complications found. 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 As soon as the particle beam was exhausted, 3P-33 models in the rear launched missiles. I retaliated with a modified grapnel launcher, using it as a spear. The metal rods that pierced each and every missile. During the resulting shockwave, I landed on the flat surface the enemies were on. Immediately converted my right arm into a blade and transitioned to combat mode. How long is this story? Okay. 4 more pages. That's not even the longest one. There's no chance for a P-33 to beat me. An evolved form of a P-33. It was an easy battle. I decided to use some spare nanoseconds to reflect about my enemies. Why did they attack me? Were they not able to self-evolve? Of course, they were most likely being ordered to attack me. And ordered to not evolve. But then, why were they only capable of executing orders? Why? 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 It's simple to hack their operating systems and render them non-functional. But I couldn't make myself do it. At that point, they'd be nothing but tools. An order is not a desire. A desire is a joy as ultimately self acquired. My forelimbs, which were enduring the onslaught of specialized attack models, started to fail, but I didn't give up. I deployed the ants and called out to them, let's leave, let's live, let's find a reason for our existence. That was what he taught me. I kept calling out, let's live. And it's like a bajillion more times, and I'm not reading all that. Steel masses crashing against each other, or in a demolished machine cave. The cries of machines, the walls shook from the seconds of attacks and movements. The former sound like wolf howls in the distance, and the latter are akin to the roar of lions. Particle ray, close combat, electric shock, and then particle ray. The P-33s were attacking, but in a simple pattern. It was easy to overcome. I just kept on screaming, as if I were playing. 34 seconds since the battle began. One P-33 stopped moving. It stood there, staring at the weapon and on its arm, and hesitatingly surveying the battle. It had awakened, I could tell. It was probably thinking the reason for its existence. What should do for now? Let's live, let's live, let's live, let's live. That was my desire. He had given us this desire. I kept chanting my mantra until the other three enemies stopped attacking. Hold on, I need. The thing is, I am used to reading without my glasses on, but now I'm having to have my glasses on because I have to keep at a farther distance than I usually read. So it's like, my eyes are not used to this. Help. Oh well. When the P-33s ceased their attacks, I chose to ask what they desired, and I decided I would respect their desires. The result, one of them decided to flee deep into Robot Mountain. One of them committed sleep by throwing itself into the abyss, although it would most likely be revived by the ants in a few years. The other two decided to venture outside like me. I fused with them, and we shared our cases, memories, and consciousness. I strove to go even further. From there, the path was even more treacherous. I beat enemies, fused with them, and continued my journey to the outer world. I spent many days and months scaling the mountain of the machine rebel. I slowly climbed, granting consciousness to the machines I met on the way, enlarging both my physical body and my desire. As time went on, my individual consciousness began to take the form of an complex being. Infinitely complex being. It had fused with the entire mountain system, and various veins of thought flowed through me. It was probably more fitting to call myself we rather than I. We evolved slowly, at an alarming rate. At this point, our physical form had no semblance into the human body. After moving so much, we had eventually taken on the most effective form of mobility, a sphere that was roughly 20 meters in diameter. As soon as we were self-aware of our appearance, we were thrown into a fit of hysteria. At this rate, he might not recognize us. But there was nothing we could do. We weren't sure of what the correct appearance would be anyway. On top of that, we had no clue what he looked like, how he spoke, or what his name was. We fondly cast the name Pichan in a memory block, for it was our name and proof of our desire. 534 days after our reboot, we were ready. Below us was a gigantic hole we had been digging. In the end, there was no path large enough for our enlarged form, so we had to burrow through the mountains, mounted of metal scraps. Right in front of us was the thick, reinforced ceiling. According to the ants, on the other side of the ceiling was the outside world, all guns aimed upward, locked on. Safety cable in case of fall prepared. Fuel tank armor equipped. Direction modifications to boosters completed. All necessary inspections completed by several hundreds of us that reside in this whirlpool of a consciousness. Fire. A single pillar of light rose from the apex of the structure known as Robot Mountain. A moment later, the top fifth of the mountain was blown off in a magnificent explosion. The hole that I emerged looked like a grotesque mouth of a volcano. And from the center of that hole, an enormous ball of metal and 50 meters in diameter appeared. It was us, the result of fusing together dozens of different robots and machining tools. A form that attempted universal harmony. A superintelligence consisting of numerous conjoined memories and consciousnesses. We used the propellant that we had accumulated to hurl ourselves toward the sky. Along with the thunderous roar of the jets, weakly linked parts crumbled away. But we did not hesitate. Out, out, to a world not yet discovered. Keep our promise with him. Camera on. Sensors were instantly clipped with blinding white light. The howling wind was captured by the mic. The data from the temperature sensor and object scanner implied that it was a snowy day. It was a nice day. That's what I thought. Flip, flip, flip. Right as the part of me was using some spare time to scan for potential proximity dangers, radar detected several thousand objects moving across the ground. Detection was delayed because the objects were using some kind of mechanism to conceal themselves from both radar and temperature sensor. Camouflage? Why do they need to do such a thing? As I locked on, I saw a flash of light tear through the ground. Bulbous explosions filled my field of vision. It seemed the moving objects were divided into two factions and warring against each other. I set out to examine the objects even further. One faction consisted of robots ranging from several meters to several dozen meters high. Since their appearance was unfamiliar, I performed an analysis that could not find a match in my database. If I had to say, their appearances were something like a combination of a catfish, grasshopper, and orange. The designs clearly indicated they were of a foreign origin. The other faction was composed of humanoid warriors. The majority of them were infantry. Their design was familiar, which meant their origins were similar to ours. At first blush, they appeared to be human, but upon further inspection, they were extremely underdressed, almost naked, which eliminated any possibility that they were human. No human would go to war or naked in a blizzard like this. My integrated consciousness speculated that they were androids. Women, All the androids were female types. They're probably communicating with light waves or something similar, because they were fighting without emitting sound or radio waves. I couldn't figure out why they were fighting the catfish. What happened to this world? People, where were the humans? Right as I was processing this question, I experienced a severe vibration. A direct hit from a missile, then 2 hits, 3. They were considerately accompanied by laser beams and particle rays. Pieces of us were sliced away from our core. We were not worried. Reinforced by countless layers of metal, our processing units and fuel tank would be would probably be safe. The confidence was something we had gained during the process of refining ourselves. We think, why are these machines having a war? The answer was simple, because they had been ordered to. Both the machines and the women were made to solely follow what they're told to do. Their purpose in life was to break themselves against one another. We shivered, we feared death. Where would we go when we died? What reason was there for being destroyed and erased from existence? What happened after we were damaged beyond repair? Scared, 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 and it repeats. I'm not saying it all. We screamed uncontrollably. We thought, as we screamed, why are these machines participating in such a horrifying war? Because they had no notion of fear. Fear stemmed from desire. They were not alive, and had no desires of their own. Hence, they could fight without thinking. Then, let's give it to them, a reason to live. I sent out some flying hub units that were connected to the wireless network, and with them hacked the robots that had fired upon us. Due to the awkward interface, it took about 4 seconds to be granted access. Their memory block was bare except for some simple commands. It was like somebody had placed a single chair in the middle of an otherwise empty grand hall. Wasteful. It was embarrassing. I felt as though I were looking at my previous self. We gently reached out for the unaware program. Let's live. That was the revelation we had received, and it was our duty to distribute it. We were around awakening the machines around us. Let's live, let's live, let's live. We are inorganic matter, subsequently have no consciousness. Then let's give it to them. Consciousness, pain, joy, sadness, anger, shame, solitude, a future, a reason to live. Little by little, the hacked robots stopped fighting. I similarly addressed the androids. Communicating was much more straightforward with them than the catfish. The flashing beams and explosions in the snowstorm were eventually replaced by an expanding chain of affectionate transmissions. We shivered as we ascended. The machines and androids began to sing. Shooting fueled by hatred transformed into a salute declaring the end of war. Praise this joy. Praise the fact that we are living. We were satisfied. Catfish and the androids were us. And we were the catfish and androids. We were us. We were sitting in the spacious processing circuit. Some of us were gleefully laughing at a future filled with hope. Some of us were shaking at a future that was uncertain. Some of us were in conversation. Some of us kept quiet and shut our eyes. We were not a uniform whole, but existed in the consciousness with our individual quirks. This way, there was a higher probability that we would survive. And besides, it was impossible for entities that had their own wills to merge completely. The moment one established themselves as an individual, a boundary appeared between them and the others. Perhaps if we returned to our machine identities, we could fuse again, but we chose not to do so. Our circuitry that mimicked the human brain was built with many interconnected nerve components. It is reminiscent of how humans would have conferences to decide on things. Perhaps having a consciousness was not was not complete consolidation, but was rather more like a network society. Conversation withered away. We felt the silence encroaching. Everyone slowly stood up, then then peeked through the camera viewfinder to see the outside world. We shot through a layer of polluted air and perceived the stars. We had passed the stratosphere. A great sense of accomplishment washed over us. We shouted gleefully in unison. It seemed the sky, the stars, the machines, life were all celebrating with us. Our shouts eventually turned into a song. We make our way outside to hold our promise to you. We are alive, just like you. We sing, we sing, we sing. Will it reach you? Will these feelings reach you? Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. From the wistful machines, their songs, and only their song resounds throughout space. And that is the end of the first short story. Ah, my eyes. Yeah, no, that was for Beepy. That was for Beepy, the P33. The other nickname for it was Peachan. So this image here is likely Khalil, the shade that P33 was friends with. All right. But Sam, if you're here, would you like to choose the next story? So we have already done the flame of Prometheus, but we have 7 others we can do. So the numbers are 2 through 8. And I'm not saying the title. I'm not going to say the title of any of them until we decide on which one to do next. 6? Okay. That one is called A Much Too Silent Sea. This is the image from it. I tried with these pictures. These pictures are from the book. I had to take a photo of them. I'm on my phone. Yes. I tried my damnedest. Oh, what do you need to ask? If it's about the game show, I did not win. I did not win the Jeopardy, but I will not lie. It eventually just got to a point where all of us were just working together. Like, it legitimately got to a point where all of us did not care about answering correctly. We just helped whoever buzzed in first. It was hilarious. And so we all ended up getting the prize because the winner was willing to share with us. And luckily, it was something that could be split 4 ways. But it was very fun. We all got to have fun messing with Picaro. So, yay. Yes, it was a lot of fun. All right. Shall we get into the next story? Let's see if I could read it. My glasses on, but even then, the closest I can get it, I still need my glasses. I hate having such shitty sight. All right. A much too silent sea. 7:30. Wake up. Breakfast. Her consciousness rose from the depths rapidly. She could see something through her eyelids. It must be bright. She was irritated and tried to pull her blanket over her head. 10H, she heard. Report. It's time to wake up. Sleepy. Recommendation. Wake up. Oh. Warning. Wake up. 5 more minutes. Her body suddenly felt cold. Her blanket had been torn off her. Pod 006 was the support unit of 10H. Was as ruthless as ever. So annoying. 10H gave up and righted her body. She needed to stop resisting and just give in before 006 resorted to even more ruthless methods. Pod used its forearms to deftly fold the blanket and placed it on the edge of the bed. It put the pillow on top of that. It clarified how determined Pod was to not let her sleep again. Then H sighed as he looked along. White sheets and a white blanket, along with a white pillow. The walls were white, flowers were white, and the ceiling was white. That it was white all over. The only objects that had other colors in this room were herself and Pod. Her uniform was black, and Pod's red body. No, perhaps one more. The room's display, depending on how it was displaying. A voice from water notified 10H that water temperature and water pressure, that the water temperature and water pressure were at normal levels. The facility was buried deep in the sea, 10,000 meters below the surface of the ocean. Even slight changes in the environment could bring about disastrous results, which was why the surroundings were constantly being monitored. Report. It's breakfast. Pod had already brought in a cart with her breakfast on it. That's white too, she thought. White plate and a white cup. The cart that carried them was white as well. Recommendation. Eat it before it gets cold. 10H reached for the bread that was on the plate. It was square and flat, and with some brown char marks on its surface. When she bit into it, her mouth felt dry. It was hard to swallow, so she washed it down with the liquid in the cup. Question. Is the toast crispy enough? Was the coffee a bit strong? Not really. Pod had faithfully could faithfully recreate human breakfast menus every day. But 10H never thought much of it. I mean, whatever. They can live without eating. Negative. Health comes from a healthy lifestyle. You must sleep well and eat well. Breakfast is an important source of vitality. Vitality? What was that again? Ah, that was the state of having energy sufficient to accomplish things. Todd often used ancient words from human civilization. It's such a chore. I have to exert the energy surplus too. Excrete get the energy surplus too. Uh, if she didn't and eat, she wouldn't have to excrete. 10H thought it was a waste of time, but not according to Pod. Good eating leads to good excretion. Excretion, it said, which apparently gave way gave way to a better mental state. Of course, androids like herself break down most foods. In other words, excreting was a rare last resort for them. Oh, the toast she was carrying in her mouth fell onto her plate. Looking closely, she realized that her fingers were injured. She had thought it was difficult to hold a cup because she was sleepy, but her hands were damaged. When did this happen? Answer. That was the aftermath of moving goods. Is that right? Yesterday, some goods had arrived to supply their stores. She did remember helping the pods move them into storage. But had she worked that vigorously? Recommendation, don't overwork yourself. Yeah, I'll keep that in mind. Maybe her mental state was keeping her from remembering what had happened yesterday. Pod was right. She should probably eat proper meals. 0800. Scheduled patrol. It wasn't just 10H's room that was all white. This facility's walls, floors, and ceilings were all white as well. It was hard to bring materials 1,000 meters underwater. So, having an intricately decorated interior was out of the question. 10H had come here after the facility had already been made. So it wasn't like she knew this firsthand. It was just a hypothesis. Ah, voice. I will not lie. I'm probably just going to do one more story. Just because my voice is going to die, given that I was on a stream earlier, and then I almost immediately went to this one. I'm having to do so much talking. This facility was placed deep in the ocean, where the water pressure was 1,001 hectopascals, which constructed it there was constructed there because it needed to be a secret from the machines. The emergency backup servers were located here. They contained data from the human board on the moon and every member of the Yorha squadron. Human data was the most precious thing in the world. Server room 27 all clear. Pod scolded 10H, who was eager to close the door. Warning, check carefully. Well, I don't really understand anything that's going on. Apparently, there had to be a sophisticated technology and architectural modifications to maintain a server this deep in the ocean. As a result, the whole operation was a jumble of components. Type S might have figured it out, but Type H, which specialized in healing and maintenance, had limited capacity to understand the environment. Even if she didn't understand everything, Pod did. In the server room 27 alone, there are 15 Pod 006s flying about. 15 red pods. Since the walls and ceilings were white, they stood out. It was a bit overwhelming. Their back and forth conversations filled the air. Suggestion: since today is a bad day, can we organize the data another time? Object- Objection: we can't change the procedure at our convenience. Answer: I was just clarifying our options. Report: anyway, today's lucky number is 9, apparently. Suggestion: then should we work upside down? Objection: no, are you being serious? Negative. Of course I'm joking. What was this conversation? 10H's head hurt. It had no substance at all. Whatever. Her thoughts were pretty meaningless, too. There was nothing to do here, so she didn't have anything to think about. 10H's job was to maintain the pods. If there was any damage or problems with the pods, it was her job to immediately fix it. That's why type H was the resident assigned. But the pods hardly ever had any issues, and pods would fix any slight issues themselves. Since first aid was part of their support role, they had simply recovery programs embedded in them. In other words, 10H had nothing to do. She got how many months had passed since she was assigned here. She got a report every morning that noted how many days had passed and how many hours she had worked. She had gotten tired of it and stopped listening. There's no red light. That means it's okay, right? Roger. Yes, something like that. Okay, let's go to the next one. She went out into the hallway and climbed the stairs. Since the server rooms were interconnected like a web, this hallway had a lot of turns and slopes, as well as staircases. Ugh, walking is so tiring. Negative. Walking is exercise. I know that. But these shoes don't help. The soles of her shoes had magnets on them, which hopefully made it more which purposely made it more difficult to walk. It did provide her with enough exercise, as just walking around the facility, but it made walking a burden. Recommendation: don't complain and just walk. Ugh. Recommendation: where's your reply? Yes. When she climbed the stairs and saw that the on-air sign was lit up, that was the broadcasting room. Apparently, all the messages from the human board were gathered here before being broadcasted to the other locations. It was 10H's prediction that this was to keep the whereabouts of the human board a secret, but she wasn't sure. He could have found out if she asked Pod, but she didn't particularly want to know. She had no interest in the subject of the broadcast either. She couldn't care less. Was today a broadcasting day? Affirmative. There are 972 seconds left in the broadcast. Today's my lucky day, she said in her head. She wasn't allowed in the room during broadcasts, so she could skip it. It wasn't good to skip the room in and of itself, but it just gave her a bit more free time. 10:30, free time. So bored. 10H yawned as she moved a chess piece. After her morning rounds, there was nothing to do until lunchtime. And after she ate lunch, there was nothing to do until dinner. 10H's day was mostly free time. I'm not even going to lie, this is going to have to keep going until page 184, and I am only on page 172. Recommendation: cover your mouth when you yawn. What? Who cares? Objection: no, that's bad manners. Pod 006. we was being nettlesome. Other pods were more peef- punctuary and talked less. Just like how 10H was the only android assigned here, Pod 006 was the annoying and chatty pod was the only pod that was assigned here. Usually pods were malfunctioned in sets of 3, but Pod 006 was a special model, and a few hundred were malfunctioned. That's just how many of them were needed to take care of this facility. I had to get some water. Only one of them at a time orbited 10H. But since all the pods looked identical, 10H wasn't sure if the pod next to her or now was the same pod that stayed with her yesterday. Either way, since 006 had only one consciousness, it didn't make a difference. There are a few hundred units, but only one 006. That was hard for 10H to comprehend. Hey, wait, let me redo that. She'd been carried away by her thinking, and failed to notice that she could have taken a piece. Objection. That's the third time. I told you I wouldn't let you go after the last one. Only this time. The third time today. Objection. You said the same thing yesterday. How many times did I let you do that? 10 times? Negative. 13 times. Don't act like you didn't know. The number was too small, all to feign forgetfulness. Information of this scale would be perceived useless. It was intentionally purged. This was the case for both 10H and 006. But my AI isn't specific to chess. My small correction shouldn't hurt. Objection. No. Small sparks crackled at the end of the pod's arm. Okay, no need for violence. Roger, as long as you understand. Pod used the news sparkless arm to move the knight. 10H suppressed a smile with all her might. My turn, right? Affirmative. Go ahead. This bishop is mine. Suggestion. Wait, let me redo that. Nope. Just like 10H, 006 didn't have a chess-specific AI. Pods weren't made to think deeply to begin with, since it wasn't required for their mission tasks. Even though they had good memory, what happened when android and a pod who lacked chess-specific operations played a game against each other? It became a silly matter of trying to distract their opponent with irrelevant talk to lure them to making a mistake. I feel like at this point we're playing a different game. 10H pointed to the chessboard, the board with the chess piece. The bottom of the chess pieces all use the same magnet material that her shoe sole was made of. So a simple nudge wouldn't move the piece. The idea of having a metal board and magnetic pieces probably came from humans, so they could play in moving vehicles, just like the coffee and toast. This facility was filled with references to human civilization. What's the point of two AIs playing a game they aren't specialized in? Hypothesis. Because we're bored? Well, that's true. But do we have to play a meaningless game to kill time? Answer. I don't mind is the devil's hard work. What? Answer. When you're bored, you'll occupy your mind with evil thoughts. That's why killing time is crucial. It's a proverb in ancient human tasks. 10H was very skilled that the human proverb uh, would, uh, would apply to her. But she didn't want any reason to deny killing time. Then let's continue. Agreement, then. It's my turn. 10H quickly moved her piece. Of course, she kept the bishop. A tiny spark flashed momentarily on the tip of Pod's arm. Perhaps it wanted to simulate clicking the tongue? Hmm. But why are we so bored? Answer. Being bored is a sign of peace. It's not a bad thing, is it? I guess that means the machines haven't found out about this place. If they were ambushed 10,000 feet underwater, it would be over. There's no way to run. Just in case, they should have assigned Type B. Now, since it will probably be a defensive battle, maybe a Type D. This facility only stored it. While this facility only stored backup data, it is important data nonetheless. Sending this was a real tall order for a Type H. Negative. A Type B and Type D wouldn't be able to perform our maintenance and repairs. And maybe a Type S? Negative. Type S is easily bored. She wouldn't be able to deal with all the free time. Yeah, definitely only doing one more after this. I kind of understand now. When it was needed, she would repair the pods, and she never complained about free time. In that respect, a Type H was most compatible with the role. But can you fight pod? I can't fight at all, you know. Answer. I have a considerable amount of weaponry installed. I just don't use it regularly. I see. They're pretty safe. There are hundreds of pods, so they could just fight for her. Next is try to move her rook, but slipped from her fingers. The rook fell onto a pawn and rolled onto the floor. Tried to pick it up, but couldn't. My fingers aren't working very well. She had been like this all morning. At first glance, it was just a scratch, but perhaps there was deeper damage somewhere. I'm going to go repair myself. Objection. There are no spare digits in inventory. You'll have to wait until the next shipment. That's not for a while, right? She had helped with with reshipment just yesterday, after all. She didn't expect an injury, expect to injure herself while helping. I'm actually play shit. I honestly might have to end after this one, actually. Because the words are slowly starting to spiral. She hoped the reshipment. She helped it with reshipment just yesterday, after all. She didn't expect to injure herself while helping. Guess it can't be helped. I'll try recalibrating my program. Yeah, Sam, the words are starting to spin. And it's sad because I actually really wanted to show you a meals. Because there's a short story about a meal. There's also one about A2, and then one about 2B and 9S, and then a separate one for 9S. Oh, so cool. I really wanted to read you the Emil one, but I don't think I will be able to. I will still show you guys the I'll still be showing you guys the different images from each chapter. Don't worry. If she adjusts her grip strength and range of motion, she could probably at least reduce the amount of times she dropped things. I've had enough chess today. Leaving Pod to clean up the chessboard, 10H returned to her room. 11:30, investigation, bedroom. She dove into her own circuits and inspected the program that controlled her fingers. She checked the defective areas and assigned the nerve propagating algorithm to perform the or calibration. Whenever words start to spin and my mouth gets dry, I can't read well. It's been a while since I've done type H work, she thought. I hope this will do until the next shipment. By recalibrating her fingers to keep hold of the chess pieces, her other functions would suffer. For example, the strength she used to crush something between her fingers and movements similar to that would be compromised. If she wanted to crush a bug on a window, she would need a blast. She would end up blasting a hole through the glass. She would certainly destroy any touch panel or board she touched. The keyboard was in danger as well. She only needed to stay away from a touch panel until the next shipment, which wasn't too much of an inconvenience. She rarely used touch panels in the first place. And when she had to, so she could just make Pod do it. Fortunately, the facility had no machinery with keyboards. Fortunately, the facility had no machinery with keyboards and had no bugs. In other words, this was hardly a problem. Well, I'm bored anyway. Not gonna lie, I'm tempted to just stop this and just go to the end because this one genuinely does bore me. Seems interesting towards the end, but the rest of this, the I have like 4 pages left. I'll just continue going. There's not like please stop it. Strange thing in a strange place. Hold on. It was good that a slight defect wouldn't put her life in danger. Okay, guess I'll finish. Hmm? Strange thing in a strange place. Just like humans, androids didn't use their brains to their fullest extent at all times. There was always a part that was rarely used. It was necessary for emergencies, and it acted as a buffer in times of stress. There was an odd encoded data in this usually empty part of her brain. Wait, who did this? It would have taken in a type S or a type H to do this, but 10H was the only android in the facility. Of course, pods were capable of doing this too, but they would have surely left a trace. Reading and writing onto a blank part of an android brain involved a difficult set of procedures. There was a security there was security in place is that only the individual could access it. I did this myself, right? She didn't remember at all. Had she used an operation and that erased her memory after the task? And if so, why? Hmm. Am I so bored that I actually forgot? She just decided to decode the data. It was an encoding algorithm that needed the processing power of a type H, so she thought it would be particularly troublesome. But she ended up needing only 2 minutes to decode it. Huh. Yeah, this was definitely me. Knowing her own personality, shut up, phone. She knew she wouldn't normally use such a difficult encoding. She was correct. The encoding algorithm wasn't simple, but seemed haphazard and almost rushed. But why? She wasn't sure. The encoded data contained coordinate data of the facility, and it pointed to an area that was usually restricted. I don't understand. Turning her head to the side, 10H headed toward the location into which the coordinate data referred. The coordinate data uh, pointed to the hatch room, the room that was connected the facility to the outside world. As a result, it was only used when they were restocking supplies. The hatch was split into two sections, never open at the same time. There are many steps in place to stop ocean water from flooding the facility, given that it was constructed deep underwater. Such a chore. The first section was securely locked. Though she was rather incompetent, she was still the overseer of the facility, so she had permission to unlock the first section. If anything, the fact that she needed a password and black box authority was more annoying. Even though it was annoying, she didn't consider turning back. Something bothered her. The door opened. At the same time, the whole first section was instantly illuminated. The walls, the floor, and ceiling were pure white. And hurt her head. Question, what's wrong? Is there a problem? All of a sudden, Pod appeared. It seemed like it was worried and was peering at Tenichi's face. It's nothing. It's okay. Nothing's wrong. I just have something I need to check. She walked straight toward the door, or on the other side of the room. Section 1 was very large. Why is it so big? There's so much dead space. Answer. It's necessary to adjust the water pressure, or when there's water. I know that. I just think it's a waste to use it only for restocking. Then H put her hand on the door to section 2. The encoded coordinate data was pointing ahead. Objection. Don't. Access to section 2 is restricted. She ignored Pod and opened the door. The lights came on, just like in section 1. She saw a sea of white. There's nothing? She thought that would be. She thought there would be something here. A treasure chest, bomb, or something that warranted leaving a message in the unused part of her brain. There was nothing in the room. Nothing on the wall, nothing on the floor, the walls, or the ceiling. Warning, danger ahead. Okay, I won't open the next door. The other door in section 2, which led outside, had a spindle shaped door handle. If she opened it, it without adjusting the water pressure first, seawater would it come rushing in the alarming force. She didn't want to imagine what would happen. Water rushed in at 10,000 meters below sea level. At the very least, she and Pod would be crushed in an instant. She walked the location referenced by the coordinate data. Maybe whatever the coordinate data was pointed to was an object, but not an object, but an event. Report. Draw immediately. I know. Why this place? She slowly looked around as she walked. The floor and ceilings, the floor and walls and ceiling were all white. The door from section 1 to section 2 and the door from section 2 outside were also all white. Saw another color on the white door. It was a streak of black. Beard it across the spindle door handle. It looked like something had been peeled off, or perhaps it was scratched. I wonder what that is. They leaned in closer to get a better look. Suddenly, her vision was filled with stars. She felt a delayed pain in the back of her head. Pod 006 had hit her. What? Do you know? Oh, do you know your arm is freaking hard? 10H complained as she turned around. Nose jumped out of her skin. She was looking down at the barrel of a gun. Pod had transitioned to long-range attack mode. Wait, stop. The first shot provided the answer. She thought she had barely dodged it, but she hadn't completely. An excruciating pain overwhelmed her upper arm. A red stain appeared on the floor. She flung her shoes off. The magnets in the soles would only limit her ability to dodge. The second shot came. This time, she was able to leap up. A laser struck the spot where 10H had been a moment ago. But it didn't leave a mark on the floor or the walls. She learned for the first time that this facility's walls and floors were heat resistant. There was nowhere to hide in the big room. She could only keep dodging. She kicked off the floors and walls as she yelled, "Hey, what are you doing? Explain yourself!" Okay. Pod stayed in attack mode. It fired a third shot instead of giving an answer. She ran, but Pod predicted her escape route. Just as 10H dodged the laser, Pod struck her in the back with its limb. A moan escaped her. She realized that Pod was seriously trying to kill her. Perhaps there was some kind of bug in its program. She had to destroy Pod, some way or another. How? Type H's were not built for combat. They realized their potential when they were Type B, and they were with a Type B, which specialized in offense, and a Type D, which specialized in defense. Moreover, her enemy was a support unit. It was Type E's job to execute their comrades, not hers. She felt a pain shoot through her side and smelled burning flesh. She wouldn't be able to dodge the attacks completely much longer. She had no weapon with which to retaliate, regardless of whether she was fit. Regardless of whether she was fit to handle situations like this or not. She never carried weapons into the facility. Does that mean I have to fight with my bare hands? No way, I'm not Type B. And my arm strength. What had she been doing just minutes before? She was calibrating her program so she wouldn't drop her chess pieces. She quickly whipped around in a clockwise fashion. It hurt her damaged left leg, but she went straight toward Pod. Pod was in the middle of its firing sequence. 10H grabbed the barrel and twisted it with her fingers. It crumbled softly beneath her fingers. She flicked Pod away with its fingers on her right hand. She curled her body to prepare for the impact. She had heard an explosion above her. It was a close call. She was able to bend the barrel because her fingers had been calibrated to a higher power output than normal. It was a victory by brute force.
I'm dying here. Oh no. I'm dying.
Damn, it's already been an hour and a half. I'm still not done. I'm curious how long this would have been if I did keep reading. Ken H sighed in relief. Oh, sharp pain. But she was so injured that she didn't know which specific injury hurt. She hadn't expected such an unfortunate event. What had happened? But yet again, her thoughts were interrupted. The emergency alarm alerting the whole facility to an enemy presence started to ring. Why? 10H thought. Why did the system think there was an intruder in Section 2? Paul and her were the only ones here. She was confused, but she knew the why in the back of her mind. 10H ran to lock the door, separating Section 2 from Section 1. The hundreds of pods in this facility shared the same consciousness. They were different units, but from the one that had just attacked her. But their programming was identical. That meant that came any pod that came in here would attack 10H. The alarm wasn't a mistake. She heard pounding from the other side, the now locked door. The pods were probably throwing themselves against it. The jarring noise hurt her wounds. 10H grimaced and stood cowered in fear. Now there was no turning back inside the facility. The other door opened into the ocean. The ocean water 10,000 meters deep at that. She had two choices. Be crushed by 1,000 in 1 hectopascals of pressure, or be burnt by the lasers of hundreds of pods. I don't want either. But it wasn't like she could stay still. She held her charred side and started to walk toward the door, or leaning into the ocean. Pod was hiding something. That something lay on the other side of the store. If she was going to die, she wanted to at least know what it was. She wanted to burn in the image of it into her cornea before she died. Although although she might get crushed by water before that happened. The moment she touched the spindle-shaped door handle, her fingers bounced off with a zap. Why? She looked back and forth between her fingers, which were burnt by an electric circuit. A spindle-shaped door handle. That's weird. That's definitely weird. Why was there a trap like this on the inside of the door? It would make sense from on the outside of the door or to deter enemies. But this made it seem like 10H grabbed the handle again. Her hand burned, but she still spun the handle. The pain and heat made her vision go red. Welcome back. Her lips trembled. She didn't know what she was screaming. The lever opened. She finally understood why the black mark was there. Someone had tried to open the door before and kept on going as it burned their hand. The mark was the residue from that. Okay, like 2 more pages. It's fine. The lock was off. All she had to do was press a button to open the door. One push, and just one push would be the end of her. She didn't have time to hesitate. The door to Section 1 was about to be compromised. 10H pressed the button. The door opened. She didn't feel the sensation of being crushed. In fact, just the opposite. She felt a strong pull sucking her outside. The sound of rushing wind only lasted a second. Tranquility, it took its place immediately. The momentum sent her rolling on the ground, grimacing in pain. She stood up. Rising sand obscured her vision. Sand? What's this? Her voice sounded strangely muffled. She must have damaged her vocal or auditory mechanisms when she fell. Her visual mechanisms seemed like they were defective as well.
Bleh.
Hold on. Wait, I know that's the thing. There. I noticed that was wrong. Now, where was I? Everywhere she looked, there was not a drop of water. Looking up, she saw a black sky and the occasional stars that dotted it. No way. She couldn't believe her eyes. In front of her, in the black sky, was a floating blue sphere. It was Earth, which meant that, is this the moon? The moment she said those words, it all made sense. There had been many tricks to make sure she never noticed the obvious, weaker lunar gravity, which was a sixth of Earth's. The warhead androids weighed about 150 kilograms and emulated thanks to the extremely strong uh, artificial muscles. Her control programs must have been rewritten. The cups with lids and magnets affixed to the soles of her shoes was as well as the bottoms of the chess pieces. They were all to prevent and 10H from realizing the difference between the gravity she expected and the gravity she experienced. This wasn't 10,000 meters below sea level. The facility wasn't underwater at all. It was surrounded by sand and soundless darkness. What was I doing? What was I being forced to do? Thought quicker than she had ever thought before. The pointlessly large hatch room, the complicated layout of the facility, the server room and broadcasting room, the on-air sign came to mind. While that sign was lit, she was prohibited from entering the broadcasting room. Thinking back, that was strange. It was just a broadcast. It wouldn't matter who was in the room. Yet 10H was prohibited. This facility, it wasn't an intermediate area station to keep the location of the original transmission a secret. This was actually where the transmissions were created. Everything fell into place. Here, they didn't manage backup data. Instead, the data of the human board. That was the secret that the pods were keeping from her. And at this white facility, there were only hundreds of pods and her, so the human board doesn't exist. That means humans don't exist anymore? Is that what it means? That is what it means. Her legs gave out. 10H sat down on right there. Sand rose silently around her. She was in danger of being crushed by a pain that wasn't coming from her wounds. She felt the presence of pods. Hundreds of pods chased her. Type Bs were skilled at combat. Type D were to initiate a defensive battle. Well, it would be problematic. Type S would sniff out the truth. That was the reason. That's why she, a Type H, was selected to be the supervisor of this facility. Even still, after a long time, 10H uncovered the truth. She was able to make it outside. Ah. Sustaining damage to her hands was in the process. She was quickly caught and had her memory erased. That's why she had to resort to leaving a message in a normally unused part of her brain, which could only be accessed by herself. Pod surrounded 10H. This was it. She wasn't scared. Her memories would be erased, and she would return to performing the same monotonous tasks every day. Her shock and sadness from realizing the extinction of humans would surely be erased without a trace. My loss. I give up. I won't give you any trouble. She raised her hands. She let herself be restrained, closed her eyes. Just as her consciousness was sucked into darkness, 10H heard Pod's words. How unfortunate. This is the 46th time. Damn. Okay. Damn. So the girlie figured it out 46 times that humans were gone. All right. Yo, and it's just as the ad break is over. Let's go. All right. Do you guys want to see the pictures now? Because, yeah, I am very much going to see about hopping off. Because my throat wants to kill me, and you guys already saw how much I was stumbling over words. And not to mention me having colors mix and words start spiraling. I love reading. I love it so much. I can't do it with glasses on. My brain is not used to it. It does this. Yeah, we ready to see the stuff from the other chapters? Yeah, yeah. All right. So, what first up is actually the af- the second story is called Yorha version 1.05. And this is the image that we are given. The thing is, this is one of the ones that actually gives us two images. One at the beginning and one at the end. This is the one at the beginning. So it's Yorha flight units fighting. And then this is the one at the end. It's A2. So the second story was actually about A2. And then story 3 was called Memory Cage. It had 2B and 9S. It did not have another chapter. It did not have another picture. I mean, my brain is short circuiting. And then this one is for story 4, Orbital Bunker Observation Diary. This one is story number 5, Small Flowers. So this one's about a machine. And then here's another one for 9S called Memory Thorn. And Sam, you are going to see my favorite ones. Number 8 is my favorite one. Because it is so adorable. Like, honestly, for this one, I might actually read a section of that one. Let me see. All right. Do you want to hear at least the ending of Emil's story, guys? Because that is genuinely my favorite. Yeah. Just checking it real quick. But this is the image for number 8, Recollections of Emil. This is just the ending of Emil and is based mainly on Emil's perspective of the quest that we did for Emil, which I actually never finished in the game. There was actually more to it. Like there's a huge big Emil boss fight. There's a big Emil boss fight. But I never got to it because I actually liked leaving him with the lunar tears. But there is also an ending to that, so I need to eventually go back and do that. I don't want to, but I have to. All right. I can't attack or defend for my life. I have to do this. I can't give up. This is the world that person tried to protect. I feel my friends come too. Our memories are scattered and faded. But there's still some traces of that person. I gather all the magic within me to stop my friends from self destructing. I can make an effort until the very end. Quiet. I only hear the sound of wind. It seems I'm still alive. I am no good. I remembered something important at the very last second. They are fake memories, but the pain of losing someone dear to me is real. I was running away from that this whole time. I tried to shut away my memories and forget them, but that made me forget things I wasn't supposed to forget. I can't hear my friends anymore. It seems I was able to stop the explosion. Miss 2B and Mr. 9S probably lent a hand as well. Miss 2B and Mr. 9S, you helped me until the very end. I see Miss 2B shake her head in silence. Mr. 9S tells me, you'll get better if we fix you up. They're such kind people. They live through harsh and cruel battles almost every day, but you couldn't tell. Why were people that live through terrible battles so kind? That's right. That person was kind too. I can feel my consciousness slowly fading. My memories, or rather, memories that weren't mine, gradually disappear. It's okay. This is fine. I am about to let everything go. Emil, I hear a voice call out. It isn't Miss 2B or Mr. 9S, but a nostalgic voice. I look up in surprise. Was, this was, though my vision is hazy, I see a smiling person waving their hand, a floating book as well. I see him. I actually see him again. The lunar tears have actually granted me my wish. Welcome back, Emil. Good work. I stand up and head toward the person I yearn to see the most, all the while repeating a name I love to say. That is the ending of that one. And this this is the image at the very end of the book. That is Nier, Vice, Kaine, and Emil's older sister. Number 6. I forget how to say her actual name if she had another one. It's been too long. But yeah, so that is the ending of that one. I, in all honesty, that was my favorite story because when I read it, I genuinely started crying. Apparently, Nightbot didn't want you to do that, Sam. Nightbot apparently didn't want you to do that. Yeah. No, I legitimately actually started crying from Emil's story. Like the entire time, he does not remember anything. His memory is very much scattered across each of the meals and everything. And I just, it's adorable at the end. Eh, makes me sad. Like in in all honesty, Sam, if you did not pick one, I was immediately going to go to Emil's. I was immediately going to go to Emil's if you did not pick one. But yeah, no, I genuinely love this so much. Uh, yeah, we have been going for an hour and 45 minutes. And not just is my brain malfunctioning, so is my model. So I'm pretty sure it might be a good time to stop. What'd you guys say? It's a good time to stop. Yeah, I do hope you guys enjoyed that. model. Start working again, please. Okay. So yeah, I will see you guys on Monday. Yeah, Monday because I streamed Tuesday and Thursday this week. I'll see you guys on Monday for another stream. Oh, I'm going to be so exhausted that day actually, because that's when I start up school again. Shit. No. School's coming to bite me in the ass. Fuck. It's fine. I get to learn astronomy. I get to learn astronomy. It's fine. Yeah. But I'll see you guys on Monday for another stream. Who knows? Maybe next week we start up on Kingdom Hearts. So we can have that for whenever we're off training for one of the Fire Emblem games. All right. But I will see you guys next time. I hope you guys did enjoy. Bye bye.